if you could tell from our aesthetic, but we are a newer destination on the Bourbon Trail. We broke ground in 2014, began distillation in 2016. By 2021, we became one of the top 10 whiskey producers in the United States. But our most recent accomplishment took place this past fall at the International Wine and Spirits Competition in London, where we were awarded Worldwide Whiskey Producer of the Year. Yeah, thank you. It's a really big deal for us.
Yeah.
I'll take your applause now or later. It's whatever you guys want. No, I'm just kidding. So this coming fall, the same competition will be taking place in Bardstown. So we're really hopeful. Maybe since it's on our home turf, we can keep the title. Who knows? You got to come back next year. I'll let you know what happened. Now, 3 things we always strive for here at Bardstown Bourbon Company are pillars of success, so to speak: innovation, collaboration, and transparency. So in terms of innovation, we have the most technologically advanced distillery in the United States right now. So you can see a little bit of it through the glass on the left-hand side. The reason why we're so technologically advanced is because of our ignition system, and that's what we call our computer program. It's very similar to the computer program used in a lot of hospitals or automotive industry like Toyota, in which case they call that Link. And this is what allows us to be on a 24/7 basis, and if we chose to, be 100% automated. We're never going to choose to be, though. Our head distiller who runs day-to-day production, his name is Nick Smith, big believer that you need that human touch in distillation. So we're about 85% automated right now. It does allow us to have less people working at any given moment, though, which is really helpful. In terms of collaboration, we'll probably talk about this the most over the next hour. We love to work with other wine and spirits producers around the world. So a lot of times this is going to result in unique finishes, where we'll take our used bourbon barrels and trade with their used stout barrels, their used Cabernet barrels, spiced rum barrels, Amrut, whatever you can think of. And we have a lot of fun with this. I really think this is a great gateway drug into the whiskey bourbon world for those that are acclimating their palate. It really helped me because I'm a big wine lover, I'm a wino. So I would have a lot of wines finished in bourbon barrels, then I started going into bourbon and whiskey finished in wine barrels. But we'll probably talk about this the most over the next hour. In terms of transparency, I'm sure you can see we went very literal in this department. We love to utilize glass throughout our facility. Best example of this utilization is the rick house right behind me, and this is where we're headed into. So we call it Warehouse K. It is very beautiful. We do light it up every single night. We're all about that modern bourbon aesthetic. Main function of this rick house, however, is to serve as our science experiment. So heat is the #1 catalyst in a bourbon's proof point, or the pace at which it ages, so to speak. So when a non-climate controlled brick house, like all 18 of our completed brick houses are, that top floor is getting 20 to 30 degrees more heat. This increases the evaporation, therefore increases the proof point, and it's going to keep the pores of the wood open for longer, infusing more of those wood sugars in a smaller amount of time than you typically see, which gives the illusion that it could be older than what it is. So it's going to taste like a 5-year when it's really a 3, for example. And that's what we're doing with the direct exposure to sunlight on the barrels into that glass. It's working out really well. We are really excited about the progress. Only been here about 3 years, and for us, that is only halfway through the aging process. We are never going to put a mash bill in the bottle younger than 6 years on its own. So in about 3 years or so, when it's complete, we're most likely going to call that small batch our Sunset Series, but that's not officially decided. It could be called our Glass Finishing Series. Either way, keep your eyes peeled. You guys can say you saw that about halfway through the aging process. So do you guys have any questions before we head into Rick House K? Actually, that's a difficult answer just because there's different capacities. So when we first started out, we thought we were going to be a very small craft distillery. These are the original 100 acres that we purchased, in which we built the visitor center, distillery, bottling plant behind it. And the first 5 brick houses that went up are going to house 23,500 barrels within them. This is an example of one of those smaller capacities for us. Then we revved it up a little bit. The next 5 are going to house 32,500 barrels. One example is where we're headed to in just a minute in Warehouse K. And then at that point, it was 2021. We were top 10 whiskey producer. We had to get them up. We had to make them big. So the remaining 4 on these 100 acres are housing the legal limit of 58,800 barrels within them. And with that, we maxed out on these 100 acres because you must have certain distances between rick houses and dry moats between them as well, just to serve as a fire suppressant if necessary, hopefully never. So for that reason, we purchased 300 more acres across the way on the other side of Flowers Baking Company, which is that white building. And we're in the process of building 16 more rick houses, all at that legal max. But 4 of which are already done, they're complete, they're already filled, good to go. Working on that 19th out of the 30 right now. So we're growing pretty fast, but we're keeping up with it. We're excited. All right. Yeah, so while we're here, please feel free to take all the photos, all the videos that you like. Nothing is a secret. Even if you guys were walking through our distillery, you could do the exact same. Our first
barrel's directly above our head too.
This is the barrel that we pull from. You guys can go on down that way. I'm just going to hand you some water on the way. We come out here, everything's done pretty much the same way it's been done for almost 200 years, thieving process included. We call this thieving because back in the day, whiskey was the first tax collected in the United States. Back then, they weren't trying to take your money, they were trying to take your product. And this is how they did so, with this large copper siphon. Of course, not called a thief at the time, but the distillers hated the process so much, they started to refer to it as thieving and a thief. Which is crazy, because we love taxes now so much. Didn't so much back then, though. Of course, everything changed. We do not pay taxes in the same way. Verbiage stayed the same, though. And you guys ever do this in the wine industry? Similar process, but the material used is most likely going to be glass. It will not really be copper, I doubt it. We use copper a lot in the whiskey world. In distillation, copper is used for its purifying agents to remove the sulfides, the oils, make sure that that distillate, moonshine, is good to go. It's going to be clean to drink. We use a copper thief so that if I'm pulling from multiple barrels of different mash bills, they're not going to cross. The thief itself stays purified. It's going to flush it out. You get a fresh pour every single time, which is really important. The hardest thing I'm going to ask you guys to do all day, though, if you could please hold off on sipping or smelling just this first one so we can go through those tasting steps together, and then I'll let you off the reins. Ladies first. Dang, this thing's coming out. I can tell this is a new barrel. I do not normally have this heavy of a hand, I will be honest, but now I'm going to be equal to everyone. I don't want to be that heavy with myself. Not this specific barrel, but the batch of this mash bill. It becomes our Bourbon in what we call the Origin Series. So our Origin Series is our 100% estate distilled product line. It's our flagship products. We have this Bourbon wheat mash bill, as well as a Kentucky straight rye bourbon and a 95.5 rye whiskey. All of which means 6 years of age, because that's our big rule around here. We call it the Steve Nally rule. He is our master distiller. The only person right above Nick Smith, who's our head distiller, is going to be Steve Nally. Even though we're a little younger, Steve Nally has been in this industry for 52 years as a whole. So we have a lot of experience sitting our helm for such a newer facility. When he got started, that 52 years ago, he was at Maker's Mark as their janitor. He was 18 years old, worked his way up over the course of 17 years. Wow. And the way he describes it, it's hard to even fathom this, but back in those days, about 52 years ago, Maker's was a very different facility than how we know it now. It was a much smaller operation. So he says janitor, but really he had a hand in everything at the time. It's kind of a smaller operation. So he did a little bit of everything, gained a lot of experience, and over the course of 17 years, finally became their master distiller. No formal education whatsoever, just worked really hard, learned from the right folks, gained that experience, stayed there for another 15 years as their master distiller, and ultimately was really itching to experiment with his own mash bills at that time. Maker's is a phenomenal facility, all about history, tradition, their 1 week mash bill that they do to perfection. It's probably not the place to experiment a little bit. So that's what led him eventually to us, where he became our very first employee, and we've not questioned him since. It's always going to be 6 years start for us. Steve now is in the Bourbon Hall of Fame, and he's known as the king of wheat amongst all master distillers. 32 years at Maker's is going to allow you to become extremely knowledgeable in your wheat mash bills, and that's what earned him a spot in the Bourbon Hall of Fame. Contributions to wheat mash bills and distillation as a whole. So for that reason, this mash bill in particular is what he calls his baby. It is very, very close to his heart. He wanted to put this on the shelves pretty much since he got his start in the bourbon world, and it took him 51 years, but we were able to make it happen last January. So we're really happy about that. We're really proud to have his baby on our shelves. I do believe we have some today as well. That being said, since we only have the 2016 and 2017 years of distillation to work off of course at that time not knowing how successful we would become, it is the product that goes the fastest, I would say. All of our Origin series, but it seems to be the Bardstown goes really, really quickly for that reason. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention his wife Donna as well. I'm a huge fan of Donna, she's really sweet. She is also in the Bourbon Hall of Fame. For completely different reasons, they're only one of 2 couples in that Hall of Fame together, but she earned her spot for hospitality contributions and tourism, and she's one of the founders of the Bourbon Trail. So they're a dynamic duo for sure.
Yeah.
All right, I've been yapping a bit. You guys have any questions? You guys know what Bottle and Bond represents? Because it's kind of a wild story for that one. So long story short, it seems like some of you guys are familiar, so I'll glaze over this one a little bit. Of course, general qualifications for bourbon: United States, some nitpicky proof requirements, majority corn, never before use charred oak container. There's no age requirements when it comes to bourbon. You could have that product aging in that container, which could be a bucket technically, for a few hours and then take it straight to bottling. But then underneath that basket, we have very specific types of bourbon, one of which being bottle and bond. So back in the day, late 1800s, distillers were messing with their whiskey, trying to make it appear darker than what it naturally was to convince people that it was older than what it was, because longer contact with the barrel is going to give you a darker hue. But they didn't add food coloring, so they were putting tar and turpentine and tobacco spit, just anything disgusting that they could, into their whiskey. And yeah, people were dying from this. I mean, not only were they getting charged triple, quadruple what that was worth, they were getting really sick, they were getting poisoned, they were dying. So the government stepped in and created the Bottle and Bond Act. And for the distillers, it gave them a tax write-off if they produced their whiskey ethically. For the consumer, it allowed them to see from the label, oh, I'm not gonna die if I drink this.
Yeah.
A lot of requirements for Bottle and Bond being has to age in a federally bonded brick house, so just extra security precautions. Has to be distilled under one season under one master distiller. You're always going to know that that product is exactly 100 proof in the bottle. It cannot be one more, one less, and it is at least 4 years of age as well. That being said, only a few people can know where that product is aging. I am not one of them. Not to say I'm low on the totem pole, but only about, I think, a CEO, master distiller, head distiller, product head of development, maybe a handful of others, and then a federal agent is assigned to us as well that comes and check up on that, just to make sure that nothing's getting messed with. Even though nowadays, Bottle and Bond is a huge source of pride, you still have to go through all the same red tape, but if you find it in a liquor store, it's not going to be tampered with, Bottle and Bond or not. Which is great that we have all those regulations nowadays. Keep us safe. You guys ready to try a rye?
Oh yeah.
All right, long hike. So for me, I feel like the wheat mash bill on my palate, very similar to a lot of what we smelled, still provides a lot of that sweetness. I wasn't getting much of a burn beyond maybe just the intensity of alcohol, because we are dealing with that pretty high proof point. Oh, do you guys want to give me your used cups? You can keep them if you want, but you want to bless a barrel? So if you have anything left over, you can throw it on a barrel. You can throw it on that one. And it's called blessing a barrel. It's like our communion.
Well, I wasted good liquor.
Right. You could have blessed me.
Why you ain't drunk that, Jace?
I gotta make it through the day, Ryan.
We got all day, buddy.
Anybody have some used
That's
ones
the point.
they need to tell us?
That's the point, all day.
Okay, so since you're off the reins, I want to make sure you know what you're drinking beforehand. Oh, you're familiar with it? Oh, cool. Do you work there or something? Oh, okay. Your smile looked cheeky, like, haha, yeah, He's just cheeky. So if you're here to find out whether you prefer wheat or rye, best experience you could have gone on, because this barrel is exclusive to the tour to compare those two flavor grains. That secondary grain is always going to be considered